Hello and welcome to the BA Knowledge Share. In this episode, we continue with the chapter of the requirements analysis and design. And in this episode, we speak about verifying requirements, which is 7.2 of the BABOK guide. The purpose behind the verifying requirements is to ensure that requirements and design specs and models meet quality standards and are usable for the purpose they serve. Now, the verifying requirements ensures that the requirements and designs have been defined correctly. Requirements verification constitutes a check by the business analyst and key stakeholders to determine that the requirements and designs are ready for validation and provides the information needed for further work to be performed. A high quality spec is well written and easily understood by its intended audience. A high quality model follows the formal or informal notation standards and effectively represents reality. The most important characteristic of quality requirements and designs is fitness for use. They must meet the needs of stakeholders who will use them for a particular purpose. Quality is ultimately determined by stakeholders. Some of the elements here are characteristics of requirements and designs quality. But quality is ultimately determined by the needs of the stakeholders who will use the requirements of the designs. Acceptable quality requirements exhibit many of the following characteristics. So this is important, right? So you want to look at whether they're atomic, meaning self-contained and capable of being understood independently of other requirements and designs. They're complete, enough to guide further work and add up the appropriate level of detail for work to continue. They're consistent. They're aligned with the identified needs of the stakeholders. They're concise, contains no extraneous and unnecessary content. They're feasible. They're reasonable and possible within the agreed upon risk, schedule, and budget. They're unambiguous. Requirements must be clearly stated in such a way to make it clear whether a solution does or does not meet the associated need. They're testable, able to verify that the requirement or design has been fulfilled. They are prioritized, ranked, grouped, or negotiated in terms of importance and value against all other requirements. They're understandable. They're represented using common terminology of the audience. The second one is verification activities. Verification activities include checking for compliance, and this is the second element. Checking for compliance with organizational performance standards for business analysis, such as using the right tools and methods, checking for correct use of modeling notation, templates or forms, checking for completeness within each model, comparing each model against other relevant models, checking for elements that are mentioned in one model but are missing in other models, and verifying that the elements are referenced consistently. Ensuring the terminology used is expressing the requirement is understandable to stakeholders and consistent with the use of those terms within the organization, and so on and so forth. So the third element is checklists. It's used for quality control when verifying requirements and designs. Checklists may include a standard set of quality elements that the business analyst uses to verify the requirements. The purpose of a checklist is to ensure that items determined to be important are included at the final requirements deliverables, or that steps required for verification processes are followed. So some of the guidelines and tools we used here are requirements lifecycle management tools. Tools have functionality to check for issues related to many of the characteristics, such as atomic, unambiguous, and prioritized. Some of the techniques used here are the acceptance and evaluation criteria, item tracking, metrics and key performance indicators, and reviews. Now, all stakeholders are involved here. The business analyst, in conjunction with the domain and implementation SME, has a primary responsibility for determining that this task has been completed. Other stakeholders may discover problematic requirements during requirements communication. So this ends the chapter for verifying requirements. So something to keep in mind, it's important to understand the difference between verifying and validating requirements. Validating requirements is the next task. But in general, let's look at this from the lens of Amanda, who is our business analyst that has been basically hired to move a brick and mortar pizza joint to an online store. In order to verify requirements, she works closely with stakeholders But before doing so, she prepares a couple of things. So one is she tries to make sure, ensures that the requirements meet specific standards, that the requirements are atomic, they're complete, they're consistent, they're concise, they're feasible, they're clear, they're testable, they're prioritized, and they're understandable. So she also checks for compliance and organizational performance standards. She checks for correct use of modeling notation. She checks for completeness within each model. She compares each models with each other, and she ensures that terminology used in expressing the requirement is understandable. She also has a prepared checklist to ensure that she is meeting a certain set of quality standards. In this case, she may use a peer to do some sort of peer review based off of the checklist. She has specific guidelines and tools that she uses, meaning she uses requirements lifecycle management tool. In this case, she doesn't have software, so she uses a simple Word document to really document the requirements to represent certain models. And she uses that tool to validate her work. Some of the techniques used here are the acceptance and evaluation criteria. She uses item tracking to make sure she's not losing track of certain issues that she's found. She uses the metrics and key performance indicators or KPIs to identify how to evaluate the quality of requirements. And also she reviews the work. She uses to inspect requirements documentation to identify requirements. She works by herself, but she's pulling in the domain subject matter expert and the implementation SME as and when needed to make sure that she has captured her requirements with quality. So that being said, this ends the second task of the requirements and analysis and design chapter. That being said, if you do consider this valuable, please consider subscribing to this channel. Please consider visiting our website at beknowledgeshare.com or joining the Facebook page. The link has been provided below. Until next time, see you then.